Good morning, and welcome to another episode of Disability Matters. I'm Morgan Spicer, Self Advocate Coordinator with People First of West Virginia. Over the years, I've learned the importance of self advocacy and how much of an impact it makes to have your story out there. Disability Matters is designed to cover a wide range of topics that will inform you, inspire you, and encourage you to strengthen your advocacy journey. Now, we'll do this by offering a variety of guests as well as interviews with advocates around the state. It's not just legislative advocacy, it's so much more. This month, I had a chance to speak to Reverend Shannon Blosser. He's from McMeechin, West Virginia, and is a member of the West Virginia Developmental Disabilities Council, as well as a pastor for two churches. So let's get to that interview now. Today, I'm joined by Reverend Shannon Blosser, who is here this month for Disability Matters. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi, my name is Shannon Blosser. I'm the pastor of Mount Olivet United Methodist and Benwood McMecken United Methodist up in the Wheeling area, Northern Panhandle. I've been a pastor now for, gosh, way too long, more than I can remember. So let's just say a long time. I used to be a journalist before I was a pastor, and then so I serve on a couple disability councils. I have two kids. Do some writing about church and disability as well as policy and disability. So glad to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. Yeah, actually, it was Tina Wiseman when we were at the hotel for that DD Council meeting that shot your name my way, and I'm like, okay, someone I haven't talked to, so I'm glad I got the chance to get you on here.
Oh, good.
All right, so I understand you are a member of the West Virginia Developmental Disability Council. How
hmm
did that come to be, and what does it mean to you?
So it was kind of by accident um, that I started to get connected with the Developmental Disability Council. I had gone to the Disability Policy Summit in 24. And my main purpose of going was I had been attending and speaking at these disability and the church conferences where it would be faith and disability talking, but it felt like we were always talking amongst ourselves. Even as a person who's autistic and has ADHD, it felt like we were only talking amongst ourselves and we weren't really listening to authentic voices other than parents. And so I wanted to step out. I was in a move year, and so I wanted to step out from that for a year and go somewhere where I could be around, authentic voices and listen to conversations about what was going on and how that could apply back to what we're doing or what I'm trying to do with bringing the church and the disability community together in policy. So I show up at this thing and I just, happen to sit down with the West Virginia crew and we start getting to talk to each other and start getting to know each other. And we go to the Capitol Hill and for the advocacy day. And a few of them, after making fun of me for having to wear my clergy collar, they're like, wow, we need to get him on the board. He's good. Um, and so Katie and Christina Smith, they got me hooked up. And so for me, it's really an opportunity to come alongside people. Uh, and I don't really talk about my own self and my own needs that much, but to come alongside people who are in the fight daily and to say that there are people in leadership in the church who are there with you. Because I feel like sometimes the church doesn't do that well. And we end up creating hostility where we should be building bridges. And so for me, it's about coming alongside, listening, advocating, supporting, learning, but also just being that champion that can say, hey, I'm here with you guys and whatever y'all need. So it's been fun. I enjoy it. One of the blessings has been I got to reconnect with some friends from college that I hadn't seen in 20 some years. So that was cool.
And how you described it kind of almost reminds me of why I love doing people first. It's the whole strength in numbers complex.
Yeah.
We're stronger together. We're here for United Cause. We're here to, you know, to see change. We want to see change happen in our communities and to make our lives easier.
Hmm.
And when I joined People First, I found that fellowship with people. They're going through the same thing I am, and from there, that just kind of built that rapport and that trust.
Yeah. Yeah. Fellowship and having people that know what you're going through, living that life, and you can share stories with, and they understand. Like I can share stories here, and people look at me and go, okay, we don't understand that. But then I can go into the community and share stories, and they're like, ah, yeah, we've been there. We understand. And I think that's important, especially when you're on this journey as a parent and also someone with a disability that you feel alone and you're fighting and you're battling. And so having that community around you is so vital.
Yeah, and it's this is why I also love doing this show. We're educating and helping people around the state, learn where their resources are, build on their self-advocacy journey, by
Yeah,
learning from others. That's why I love having a variety of guests on the show because it's a learning experience, not only for me, but it's also a learning experience for them. I've definitely learned a lot doing this show for the past year and a half, so
awesome.
it's great. Didn't want to talk about myself there too much.
No, no, you're fine. You're fine.
Okay, so I understand you have a son who has a disability.
Hmm.
Tell us how you use advocacy skills to make his life better every day.
Both of them, both of my kids actually are on the spectrum. So my oldest, Noah, he's 13. He is level 3, nonverbal. He also deals with some depression, anxiety, some stomach issues as relate. So one of the things that we've learned in advocating for him is that where he's nonverbal, we're his voice and we're his champion when it comes to the doctors and the school. And we're having to communicate with them on how to better communicate with him. And sometimes it's about helping them to understand his code. Every time we go to a new school or we're going to a new church or we're going to a new doctor, we give them this sheet that is about Noah and about how do you communicate best with him and how a Mickey Mouse episode from season 4 might relate to this situation going on. And so it's constantly advocating, it's educating. With Thaddeus, our youngest, he's 6, autistic, ADHD, most likely when he gets a little bit older, and um, he's mini me. You see him, you see me, and it's like, yeah, I understand more about myself now because of him. But for him, where he's a little bit more verbal, it's also about helping teachers and others about how best to navigate. We're still in that early parenting stage with him, first grade in the fall. So we're really helping to how best do you care for him? How do you give him what he needs, but also helping him to understand boundaries and rules? And we ran into a few of that at his school this year. And we've been able to stand up for him when we felt like it was time to just call it a season and just say, you know what? Sending him to school for the last week when all you had are games and nothing consistent is not safe for him, and it's going to cause more problems for him. It's going to cause more problems for the students. So why don't we just pull him out, use his unexcused absences, and just call it a year and work that through with the teacher and the administration so that everyone can understand and be on the same page and not force it, but to say, hey, this would be best for everybody. And that's been a big help for him. And, uh, there's been struggles along the way. There's been times when you have to, throw an elbow in an IEP meeting, or there's been times when sadly for me as a pastor, where I have to go in and say, hi, I'm Reverend Shannon Blosser. And it breaks my heart as a pastor when I go into those meetings and I see people change on their behavior towards my kids the second I say I'm a pastor. And I think about that and I think to them of, okay, what about someone who's the waitress at the Applebee's or the bagger at Kroger who may not have that same privilege? How are you treating them, their child, the same way as you would treat my child now? And that's the key that we've got to get to with IEPs and all the meetings, that every single child is a child of God and a person of worth, and that we have to see that value everywhere.
Absolutely. And, a lot of, again, that ties to people first. I mean, we're their voice.
Mhm.
You are your son's voice. You've got to vocalize what they need, and, you mentioned IEPs, which is something, I mentioned in a previous interview, why it's just so important, that you have a say in it and
Yeah.
that you participate in them. But wow, yeah.
And you
It's
know,
just, I mean, it comes around to people first. Like you see the individual as a person first.
mhm.
Their disability is second.
Yeah,
You don't want to look at someone and say, oh, that individual with Down syndrome. Yeah, you just, he's a person just like you and I.
exactly.
He doesn't want to be labeled, and nobody deserves to be labeled.
Exactly. And I think one of the things too that what we do, we try to do in the IEPs is we try to make it friendly. We try to make it a true team to where they know we're working, trying to work with them. Where it's not the only times we have to be adversarial is when you got to, throw those shoulders and really fight for what you need. But that teamwork aspect then gives you opportunities, at least in my experience, to help for others. Yeah, I know of a situation, and I don't want to name names, I don't want to name schools because I don't want to get anyone in trouble, but of a teacher who sent me information about a situation that was going on at another school that they were friends with. I was able to, we used my son, we used one of my kids as a help for this, put information in his backpack to transfer to that teacher who could then transfer it to that student that they knew about so that we could get them help. And so that's the cool thing is like sometimes having those relationships can get you in places where you're not just helping your kid, but you can indirectly help someone else's kid.
Absolutely. And that ties into people first. I mean, you know, I personally, when I joined, I had issues with, transportation, doctors, and, you find out that these individuals that you become friends with, and, they become more than that over time,
Yeah.
you know, they are going through the same thing you are.
Hmm.
And you guys can learn from each other, and you can teach them something that maybe they didn't know.
Yeah, I agree.
So, what does self advocacy mean to you personally? And what are some examples of how you've used your voice to advocate for yourself or others?
To me, self-advocacy is about being your authentic self, recognizing your authentic needs, and expressing that in the best way that can communicate to others about what it is that you need to thrive. Uh, and I think for me, one of the things that I've been learning over the last 3, 4 years, especially, is I would do a bad job about just pushing through burnout. Burnout with ADHD and autism and how those two come together, especially in the field that I do, where it's like every day is something new, every day is a challenge, but then you have days where it's a 12-hour day, days when it's like an easy day, and days when you can go from a funeral to a church council meeting. All of that kind of chaos and lack of structure would sometimes make me just go chaotic in my brain. And so I've had to do a better job speaking up to my personnel committee here and also to my direct superintendent, my district superintendent, and even to my bishop in some ways to say, hey, here's what I need to thrive. I need to do a better job about protecting my day off. And I need people around me who will tell me to go home so that I don't just stay here and work myself to death. And that's been a big blessing here because they know they have permission to tell me to go home. And they have no problems telling me to go home when they see me exhausted or doing too much. Um, It's one of the things I hope we can model in my kids, because I didn't have that growing up. I didn't have that modeling growing up. And so for them to see me advocate for myself and taking time for myself and to, champion others who are self-advocating, my hope is that it reminds them at 13 and 6 that as they go older, they can be advocating for themselves and stepping into that role.
Yeah, and that is something we do here with People First. We do have a youth advocacy program where we do travel to various high schools around the state and just teach the high school students why self-advocacy is so important.
Oh,
Like
yeah.
when you graduate, that's when it all starts. Like you should be advocating when you're in school for, if you're
Mhm.
having trouble with the test or if you need a quiet space to do your job when you're not don't want to be bothered by anybody else.
Yeah.
But
And
yeah,
we've got some folks here. One of the things I love about our church here specifically is we've got a lot of folks who are on the spectrum or on ADHD at some point. And so we've been helping them, like giving information. Like this one person who just graduated this year, like here's some ways to help with advocacy or ways to help with setting up your own goal. And we're seeing fruit of that. And so the more that people can step up, take care of themselves and take care of their needs and be honest and open, the better everybody's going to be.
absolutely. And from someone that has ADHD, I have it. I was diagnosed with it when I was young. You know, I'm not going to say that my life was difficult, but I definitely had some challenges
Hmm.
getting to where I needed to be. And there was a lot of support, like with individuals with like ADHD. Like sometimes, and I'll tell myself here, I have issues sometimes focusing and, concentrating. And, I'm trying to find ways to help myself do that.
Yeah,
And sometimes it's okay to go to others and say, can you help me with this? Maybe there's something that you know that I don't.
right.
So,
We have a big joke here that I plan out sermons about 3 months in advance. Now, one, it was something I was taught years and years ago, but two, it helps me to keep on track so I don't go down rabbit trails of, tackling whatever issue seems to be the most prominent, knowing that just because it seems prominent at the moment, it's not what you want to always bring in. And so people, when I first got here, they would laugh and go, "Why are you giving this 3 months in advance? We were lucky. We're happy if you just give us 2 weeks in advance." And I would sit there and go, "That's just how my mind works. That I'm better when I can have that kind of structure." To where now they get excited about it because it's like, hey, it helps them to plan. So I'm like, see, letting me be me works for everybody.
yeah, and it's all about that teamwork, especially when you're working with a group of people and in any place that you
Hmm.
go to, teamwork's very important. You got to be able to get along. You got to be
Yep.
able to share your ideas. Um, and be ready to defend them if someone's like, well, why are you doing it that way? Or can we do it this way? That's another thing with self-advocacy. It's learning the right and wrong way to do things.
Right.
So you wouldn't go to a legislator and be like, angry at them. That's not going to get you what you want.
Exactly.
But, talking to them from a passionate standpoint, that's probably going to do more than just being angry with them.
I agree. I agree. I wish some of my friends would learn that lesson.
Yeah, I mean, a good example of that was one year we did what was called vision boards here with our local People First chapter. We had someone come in to teach them about what vision boards are. They
Hmm.
created these little posters of the things that were important, like transportation,
Hmm.
healthcare, things like that. And when we went to Disability Advocacy Day, they actually got to meet their legislators and show them those vision boards.
Oh, that's awesome.
And they were explaining it. And it was amazing just seeing them have that courage to talk to them. And it was so much
Yeah.
easier for them to communicate because this is something that's personal to them.
Positive vision advocacy is so important. If you can stick on the vision and what will it take to get us there, get you so much more groundwork than if you just come in and say everything is bad, this is bad, fix it. And so that positive focused in on the vision, on the purpose helps everybody so much.
Agreed. Definitely agreed. And I hope I'm not going off on a
No,
tangent
no,
here.
no. I could talk politics and policy all day long. So,
Yeah. Okay. So if there was one thing you wish people without disabilities knew that would help people with disabilities, what would it be?
what it really means to wear a mask. We talk a lot in the disability community about wearing masks and, that, we mask up when we go to different places, or things in society. But I don't think, and I think people who are neurologically typical or do not have a, developmental disability or any type of disability are starting to understand the idea of masking, as in, what you see in front of you is not always what the real person is like. I don't think people really have a good understanding of that emotional wear and tear that goes into someone when you have to mask all the time. And so for like myself, Sundays are my heavy masking day. There is no hiding in my office. There's no like getting away for a few minutes to just step outside. Like from the time I get there to the time I am done, it is completely all in masking where I have to be, joyous. I'm a happy-go-lucky guy anyways, but where I've got to have that turned up to 11 and I've got to be able to process immediate conversations and have multiple conversations going on in my ear and have all the people rushing up to me or wanting to hug or wanting to touch or all of this to where by the end of the day, after I do my two churches and then I have a third service on Mondays, by the time I get through all of that, I feel like I have been hit by a Mack truck and that I am just so emotionally exhausted and so worn down that I need to actually sit in my office sometimes for 10 or 15 minutes before I can even hit my car to go home. And I just need that detox or listen to music that will calm me down, which is sometimes AC/DC, but that's another story for another day. Um, I don't think people recognize how exhausting that is because what they see of me is, oh, you speak well. Oh, you're so passionate when you're up front, but they don't see that cost of having to throw everything in front of you to get through that one tiny moment. So I think if we had a better understanding of what it really looks like to mask, I think we would have more compassion. I think we would have a more adapted society. And I think things would be a little bit more accessible for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. I agree because when I first started doing public speaking, I mean, that was something that I was never able to do.
Yeah.
And luckily, I have a great group of people that I work with that were able to just encourage me to just do it. Is I mean, I go up there and I'm so worried about, okay, what am I going to say? I mean, and it's
Mhm.
helpful to have what you're going to say in front of you. And I think I'd like to say now that, I definitely have conquered that fear. I'm not nervous anymore of people. But yeah, I mean, you got to put that mask, you got to put the mask on because, you know, it's going to, yeah, your disability will get in the way,
Yeah.
but you can't let it affect the goal with, per se for your churches to spread to spread the word.
Yeah.
Like, you want to make your point clear, but you don't want your disability to get in the way of that.
Yeah.
Does that
Like,
make sense?
no,
Does
no,
that make
exactly. It's like I'll give you an example. A couple weeks ago when I lost focus during the service, we had it was Memorial Day weekend, and where this church is, one of my churches, right across the street from us is a memorial park, and it has like some structure, like some statues for the veterans, and there are on the 4th of July, Memorial Day, Veterans Day, they put up a flag for almost every veteran from this area. So it's like 100, 150 flags over there. Well, the honor guard goes around on Memorial Day to all of the cemeteries and the memorial statues and all this and do a 21 gun salute. I didn't hear that last year because I was on vacation. So this year they're all like, "Oh yeah, we're gonna have a 21 gun salute during the middle of worship. It'll be fine. You won't hear it. You won't hear anything." I'm like, "Okay, 21 gun salute. We won't hear anything. It'll be fine." It came right during the middle of the sermon. You could hear it loudly, and you could hear it like it was inside the church. I lost focus for about 5 minutes and just went through like a comedy routine trying to get myself back on track because that one distraction, it became a rabbit trail for me. And I got focused on that, and the mask came off, the unable to just really process in front of a crowd came out. And it took a little bit for me to get back in focus. And then once I got back in focus, it was fine. But then the next day I went up to the honor guard when I saw him at the parade and go, "Thanks for the heart attack." And so but yeah, it amazes me the things that can sometimes take us off focus when we don't mean to.
And it could be the smallest of things. Maybe you forgot
Yeah,
something at home. Maybe something at work didn't go the way you wanted. It could just be anything. Like one little thing is enough to just break the whole system, and then you just got to go back and
restart it.
refocus, get your mind where it needs to be, and just go back to
Yeah.
it.
And the great thing about the church was they recognized I had lost my focus for a second. No one said anything. They just were like, "Okay, give him a second, he'll get back." And so that tells you acceptance when they are like, "All right, give him a little bit. He'll all right, we got to listen to his bad dad jokes for a few minutes, but he'll get back." So that was pretty cool.
So, from an individual that has ADHD, you mentioned you have some coping mechanisms.
Hmm.
Is that maybe that's something you'd like to share? Make some good coping mechanisms?
Yeah, so like whenever I'm doing like podcasts like this one or some others, I usually will have something in my hand to fiddle with. So it'll either be like my pen or it will be in my case today it's a binder clip because it was the first thing I could find. So it just helps me to stay focused. If I've got something, in my hand, if I'm in a long meeting, I usually will doodle off to the side. I make sure I take notes. That helps me to, even if it's a meeting where I know someone's going to send me notes later, if I can have those notes, it keeps me focused. Um, but then just allowing myself to, if I've got to move in my chair, I got to move in my chair. No one's going to care if you got to sit up, sit down, and all that. So I fidget a lot, and I think, I used to get embarrassed by it, and get frustrated and be like, "No, you got to sit up like this," and if you fidget all the time, someone's going to yell at you. And I'm like, wait a sec, I've got my own office. Who cares if I fidget in here? And so just be yourself. I think that's the key is just be yourself. You know, I have a special interest of presidential history. And I think some of our greatest presidents, as I look back on them, including my Pez dispensers up there on my wall, they were all themselves. They didn't try to be someone else. They were just them, and their authentic self came out in leadership, whether it was Lincoln, Washington, or some others. Um, so that's the key. Just be you and have a binder clip available.
For me, it's a pen.
Yeah, yeah, that was. Oh, I get in so much trouble for pens. I have a bad habit of losing pens, and I have to have the right pen, but then I will leave them in pants. And let's just say my wife says, "I enjoy it when I do that because then I ruin things." So, yeah.
Yeah, I have a tendency to, click a pen like
Yeah.
repeatedly, or like if I see someone having a pen out and it's not closed, it's just a pet peeve. Like it gets
Yeah.
on my nerves. Like, you're gonna waste the pen doing that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's some other things too, like professionally, like I- this church especially will look at me and go, "You don't have to robe." But for me, that robing is a focus mechanism. So robing up, wearing the robe, the stole, even though I don't have to, like all those that are back there, it's a coping mechanism. It reminds me of, hey, focus, focus. And so, yeah, we all have our things. As long as they're safe and they don't hurt you or others, be you.
Absolutely. Be the most authentic version of yourself that you can
Yep.
be. I definitely agree with that. Well, is there anything you would like to add before we go ahead and close?
I'll say this, with work that I do in the church, we've done a lot of training with churches on talking about how to be more accessible. That goes beyond just ramps and having a nice little accessible seat up front. But if there are people in their faith communities that are watching, listening, that would like to talk more about how to be a little bit more accessible in your church and truly be accessible, find me on Facebook, find me on the DD Council, give me a call, shoot me an email. Find me at Mount Olivet in Wheeling, and would love to sit down and talk. And I do it for free for anybody. So it's not me coming in and say, hey, you got to pay the pastor. No, it's free. Because I want to see every church in West Virginia be more accessible so that when I go to your church, I don't have to worry about it for me or my kids.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. Gosh, I'm sorry.
You're fine. Take a breath.
Thank you so much, Shannon, for joining me today. I really appreciate it. And you've really, this has been a really great interview. I've absolutely enjoyed it.
Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity.
All right. Awesome. Well, thanks again, and we'll talk soon.
All right, see you, buddy.
See ya. Thank you so much, Shannon, for joining me this month. Don't forget, if you want to be featured on an episode of Disability Matters or have a subject you would like discussed on a future episode, you can reach out to me by calling me here at 304-422-3151 extension 129, or you can email me at morgan.spicer@thearcmob.org. I would love to have you on a future episode of Disability Matters. With that, we're out of time for this month's episode. Join me next time for another episode of Disability Matters. We are advocating, educating, and celebrating the potential within you. See you next time.